Good morning, everybody. Welcome to class this morning. I hope you're all having a good week, having a good day, having a good time. As we're getting started here for class today, I wanted to kind of start out today by just giving you a couple announcements. I've got your Module 1 assignments graded. And so with your Module 1 assignments being graded now, you can go in there, you can have a look at my feedback. I can give feedback on everything, especially if you made less than 100. You want to look and just see what you were missing, see what you could have done better. If you click that little view rubric link there, it'll show you the scores and how you did in each part of the rubric with my feedback there for you. So we want to make sure that we're checking that, especially if you got less than 100, so that you know how to do better going forward. Also, as we get going today, we are kind of in the middle of Module 2 right now. I think we have, due Thursday? Either way, I'll give you a reminder about when your assignments are due on this module. Got to go back and double check that just to make sure. I want to say Thursday off the top of my head, but I don't quite remember. But that's what that begin here module is for. So I can go back there and look at that one-stop shop. See all my due dates, see all my contact information, anything that you would need to be able to keep on progressing in this course. It's all right there. So, just making you aware of that due date as it's coming up quickly. So there is that. So let's talk about what we want to do today in terms of content, what we want to teach, what we want to talk about. We're working on Module 2 now, which is about the cloud. And I want to talk about what the cloud is, what the cloud does. I'm sure you've heard a lot about the cloud. It seems like every other commercial nowadays is about some kind of cloud service. We're going to offer this cloud service to your business. We're going to put your business in the cloud. You need to be in the cloud as an individual because it gives you this and this and this benefit. And so what we want to do is we want to talk about what exactly the cloud is, because I bet some of you are probably wondering, well, what exactly is the cloud? What does it mean to have data in the cloud or to work in the cloud? Because I hear all these commercials telling me that I should be doing it, but what does it mean? And in the latter half of the live stream today, in the latter half of our class today, I'm going to be demonstrating a few cloud services to you. Some of them you're probably familiar with. Maybe a couple of them not as much. And so we'll have a look at some of these in demonstrations a little later on in the live stream today. So in the cloud or on the computer, when we're talking about something that's on your computer, it's accessible locally. You save it to your hard drive, you save it to your C drive, your D drive, whatever you've got on your computer there. If you have a Mac, your drives are labeled something differently, right? You're saving it to a flash drive, you're saving it to some sort of physical media. And if you go back to last week when we talked about our computer parts, we talked about the HDD and the SDD, or SSD rather. Our HDD and our SSD and our computers being our non-volatile storage. When we are working with something on the computer, we're talking about stuff that's saved to our own personal non-volatile storage on our computers. And when our computer itself is actually doing the data processing, it's taking everything and putting it through that processing cycle, taking data and turning it into information, turning it into something that's valuable to you. So what exactly then is the cloud? And so in saying that, we're really not talking about something incredibly complicated here, but in order to kind of get us there, let's start off with a big wall of text. Get ready for the big wall of text. Here it comes. And there it is. And let me make this bigger just so you can read it a little better, since it is a big wall of text. And so this is kind of some of our complicated definitions of what the cloud is, right? We talk about removable storage. This is what we were essentially just talking about. A lot of different ways to store information on your computer, and the most popular way is your hard drive, and that's a part of your computer, right? We talked about that last week. That hard drive, that solid state drive, that's your non-volatile storage. That's what we were just talking about. But it could be in some kind of, we are also talking about like CDs, compact discs. We're talking about USB drives or flash drives. And so when you have this data, it's saved onto one of these disks. And in order to use that data, you have to have physical access to that disk. In order to be able to use data that's on your personal hard drives, you have to be on your computer. Or in order to be able to have access to data that's on a USB drive, you have to have access to that USB drive so you can plug it into whatever device it is that you're using. So you have to have physical access to the device that is containing the data that you want to use. But that's not always convenient, right? Like we discovered, especially in recent years, that we want to have access to our data. We want to be able to use our data on our computers and then use our data on our phones and then use our data on our tablets. And we want to have access to that same data across many different devices. And so this is where the cloud comes in, right? Because, our hard drive and our removable storage, we have to have physical access to that to be able to use it. But what if we don't have our flash drive? What if we don't have access to our computer? What if we're using a computer in the library? What if we're using our phones? So we have these limitations on this physical media, and the cloud kind of helps us circumvent that. Another limitation that is on our physical media is that it can be damaged, right? Like your hard drive can just die one day. Like remember last week when we were talking about the parts inside of our computer, and I showed you that picture. I showed you that picture of the inside of a standard hard drive disk, and we started talking about how it worked. And we said, we had the little arm there that reads between the magnetic layers, and it takes and it moves that arm around, and that arm is a mechanical process. Right? It's actually physically moving a thing around. And when something is physically moved around, it creates friction. And with motion and friction comes wear and tear and damage. So all of a sudden, your hard drive could just stop working. All of a sudden, your solid state drive could experience a power surge and stop working. Your flash drive, you could drop it and step on it and break it. And in the event that that happens, all of that data is gone. It has ceased to be because your storage media, what you are putting it on, that physical device that you are putting it on, is broken. And so that leads us to what we need. Right? We can take these two big problems that we have with our physical media, with our hard drives and with our flash drives, and we can see these things, and that clearly elucidates what we need in terms of what we want cloud storage to be. We have these two problems. One, you have to have access to the physical media in order to be able to access the data. And two, well, that physical media can break. So we want something that can't break, and we want something that we don't have to have physical access to in order to be able to get our data from it. And here's where the cloud comes in. Clouds are essentially online storage areas hosted on remote servers. Now, we said last week that a server is a computer. This is going to become key in just a moment. So this means they aren't located in your immediate area. They could be across town, across the state, across the country, across the world. First problem. And the second part here solves that second problem. Maintained and backed up by a cloud provider over a network. So not only are we solving the problem of access, but we're solving the problem of damage. Your data is maintained and backed up. We don't really get that deeply into it in the class, but when we are talking about virtualized cloud storage, we're talking about redundancy. And there's high levels of redundancy in virtualized cloud storage, meaning that your data is duplicated in the cloud 2, 3, 4 times in case, something fails. Then one of these copies can be restored, or some other resources can take over, and your data is still accessible to you. So unlike you, where, if you have data on a flash drive and you drop it on the floor and you step on it and you break it, and oopsie daisy, you didn't have that data backed up anywhere, so now you've lost all that data. If something happens to data in the cloud, because of how these cloud service providers maintain and back up the data, it's no problem. You still have access to it. Everything is right there for you, convenient, anywhere in the world. You go on vacation, all you have is your phone, and you get a text message saying, oh, I'm looking for this file, where is it? Well, you can just fire that cloud service up, send it back to them. Everything's good, right? But I want to kind of point out something here that a lot of people really don't think about, because we think about the cloud in a particular way. Like, I think there's a lot of mysticism revolving how we consider the cloud in general. Right? But we're just talking about online storage areas hosted on remote servers. And last week we were talking about the different types of computers, and we said that a server is just a computer. It's a computer, maintained by a business, but it's still a computer. So really, when we're thinking about the cloud, what we're really thinking about is essentially someone else's computer. In simple terms, the cloud is just someone else's computer. It's a computer that belongs to Google. It's a computer that belongs to Amazon. It's a computer that belongs to Microsoft, or any other number of cloud service providers. But it's just a computer that belongs to one of these companies. And what we see here is a facility kind of similar to what you would see when you go into a data center, which is, somewhere that provides servers for cloud purposes, essentially. When you walk into a cloud service provider or you walk into a data center, you're going to see something like this, and you see cables just absolutely running everywhere. Let me make this big again so you can see all the detail. You see cables just absolutely running everywhere. Network cables and power cables and various other odds and ends. And we have someone going around here just kind of monitoring things, checking things just to make sure everything works. And, as we stated last week, this looks exceptionally complicated. And really, it isn't, right? It's just a different form of computer. And this different form of computer is what we see in the cloud that helps us solve our problems. And we talked about those two big problems of data storage, but I would like to also look at this in terms of some other problems that the cloud solves. What are the benefits of the cloud? And so the big thing that we've already talked about here is that they really eliminate the need for external storage devices. You can save something in the cloud. You can have access to it as long as you have access to the internet, and everything's great. You don't have to worry about it getting damaged. You don't have to worry about data loss. You don't have to worry about somebody necessarily, you don't have to worry about somebody stealing your flash drive, which is huge. But another thing here is that cloud storage is scalable. You got that flash drive, right? And that's an 8 gigabyte, 16 gigabyte, 32 gigabyte flash drive. And that's as big as that flash drive is ever going to be. If you have a 4 gigabyte flash drive in your hands, which I say that just because I do at the moment, you know, even though nobody can see me, I like to have little hand gestures and stuff going on that's like physically illustrative. Right, I have a 4 gigabyte flash drive in my hand at the moment. And that's as big as that flash drive is ever going to be, 4 gigabytes. But in the cloud, well, that's, you know, look at all that stuff. Look at all these resources. Big computers, lots of storage. Right, so you can start with 4 gigabytes. And then if you outgrow that, well, you can up it to 8. You can up it to 16. You can up it to 32, 100, 200, 500, a terabyte. However much you need. And when you do that, there's no downtime. There's no loss of service. There's no data loss. You don't have to copy anything over. Cloud storage is scalable like that. What we like to say it's elastic. Right? You know, and think about something that's elastic. Think about a rubber band. Right? Like I can take a rubber band and I can stretch it out. Now, I mean, there is a limit to that resource, right? And there's a limit to, you know, file storage and data resource in the cloud as well. You know, there's a finite level here. But I can take that rubber band and I can stretch it out. And I can make it as long, essentially, as I want it to be. Right, so essentially that's what we're doing with cloud storage here. It's elastic. We like to say it's elastic. We can take it and we can stretch it out to meet your need. But it can also go the other way. It can also contract back. So when we don't need as much rubber band to put around something, we take it off, we let it go back down, and, you know, it meets its level, right? You can take a rubber band and put it around a poster. You can take a rubber band and put it around a book. It meets the need of what you need it for, and that's essentially what we're talking about here. And we can do that. We can stretch it out. We can let it contract. We can put whatever kind of data we want on our cloud service and use whatever resources that we want at any given time, right? We might just have to say, hey, let's start paying $3 a month to go up to the next tier. You click that button to go up. They take a little money out of your account. But otherwise, you notice no other issues. It gets bigger, and, you know, if you ever needed to go back down, you stop the service, you're good. Now, the biggest, most obvious benefit here is file sharing, right? And I think a lot of you know about that already, right? Because a lot of, especially my high schoolers here, are, you know, a lot of really used to using Google Docs, and again, you know, like just kind of putting aside here, go back and look at that saving and submitting files thing to look at more about sharing files for your cloud services, because we need those. We're gonna talk about them again in our demonstration here in a minute, but I just want to make sure that we're all clear on that video is there if you have any questions about that. But you can share files, and I can share files, and I can share them with whomever. You know, like here at CCC, we have the Microsoft Office 365 environment. You all have access to that for free. We'll talk more about that in just a little bit. And I can share a file that I started working on with any of my colleagues, and they can work on it right inside of their browser, wherever they're at, as long as they have an internet connection. And the changes that we make will be made to the same file, and each other can see the changes that we make individually. And that's kind of the point to the collaboration assignment for this module. If you haven't looked at that yet, by the way, you probably should be. That collaboration assignment. So we have this file sharing that is super significant. 2 colleagues, 3 colleagues, 4 colleagues, just however many people that you want to work on this document can be working on the same document at the same time or at different times all around the world. You don't have to attach anything to an email. You don't have to download a physical file. It's all in the cloud. And then, as we've already mentioned, the companies that offer the cloud services manage the clouds. There is one instance in which they don't manage the clouds that we'll talk about in a little bit. But that's also something that you'd probably use if you knew a little bit more about what you were doing with the service. So the general things that you're familiar with are completely managed and completely good. Now, there are some drawbacks to the cloud, right? Like, it's not fair to say that everything's just a benefit, that we just use the cloud and everything's good, right? There are some drawbacks here that we need to consider. So let's have a look at a few drawbacks. And the first one here is significant, is that when you're using clouds, you do have an increased personal security risk. Right? One of the big rules of thumb when we're talking about security, which we'll get deeper into when we get to our security module later in the course, but everything's kind of interconnected, so it's kind of tough to, single some things out. But one of the big things that we talk about when we talk about security is that if you can access it online, if you can access it from anywhere in the world, so can other people. So if you're sharing a document that has other people's personal information in it, or your own personal information in it, or you want to make sure that you're sharing it with the right person, because that's one of the ways that data loss and a security issue can happen, is if you just accidentally click and share it with the wrong person. Now somebody else has information that you probably didn't want them to have. If you share something publicly, somebody can just accidentally get it, type in their URL incorrectly, and end up on yours. So that's another issue. And that's all without talking about bad actors. That's all without talking about people who are, trying to gain access to files. So when you start talking about those people, you start talking about things like how you need to have a good password. When you talk about information security policies. What are you allowed to put in the cloud versus what you must have locally in order to kind of maintain data services and maintain confidentiality. So that's pretty significant. Another thing is that software compatibility has to be tested to ensure that all the devices can access the data. This used to be a bigger deal than it is now. Right, so this isn't quite as big of a deal anymore, really, nowadays with a modern browser, something like Chrome or Firefox or Microsoft Edge. You can get into any cloud-based service and access it. Where it becomes more of an issue is when it comes to like interoperability of things. Does this cloud service work with this app that I like to use? For example, here at Cleveland Community College, we use Blackboard. And there are integrations. There are things that allow the college to link together Blackboard with different cloud services. So if you want to integrate your cloud service into something like Blackboard, which is in and of itself a cloud service, by the way. We'll talk more about that in a minute. Then you have to make sure that they play nicely together and they integrate in a way that you would expect them to integrate. So sometimes we see this software compatibility being an issue still, but more so that was an old problem that isn't as relevant anymore. The next thing is cost. All right, like if I go and I buy a flash drive, $15 and I can get a nice big flash drive. And I can carry that around with me and I can save my data on it. And that $15 is going to be for the life of that flash drive. until I break it or lose it, or run out of space, I guess. That $15 got me my flash drive. But with cloud services, oftentimes what you're experiencing are subscription costs. $3 a month, $5 a month, $10 a month, depending on how much storage you need or what kind of services you need, maybe even more. Right? So these storages and the storage and these services, it can rack up. Whereas you spent $15 on a flash drive, and that's going to last you a good while because you're careful with it, and you're not saving that much to it. However, oftentimes this cost could also be a benefit. For example, here at Cleveland Community College, the IT department recently moved a lot of what we would consider on-prem or on-premises to the cloud, to infrastructure as a service, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. If you've been on campus here at Cleveland Community College, you've probably seen our data center. You've probably seen our area that looks like this. It's upstairs. It's across the hall from the business office. So if you've been there, like to pay for classes or whatever, then you've probably seen what we have here on campus for this. And so, as you can probably tell here, with all the power cables that you see running around and all the network cables that you see running around, this uses a lot of electricity. It uses a lot of network data. There's a lot of cost associated with running a data center, with running these servers. Electricity, HVAC, they have to stay cold because these things run hot, right? And if they get too hot, they break. You want to make sure that you have a safety system in place, in case something catches on fire. You want to have a security system in place, firewalls, and all these other things. So there's a lot of cost in running your own on-premises data center, but a lot of people do it and choose to do it for security purposes or for a lot of other reasons. However, we talk about cost being an issue. Cost could also be a benefit, because it costs a lot to use this much power. It costs a lot to use this many resources, to have people that are in there working on these machines, to maintain them, to upkeep them. Right? So if you look at your budget and you weigh how much you're spending with your on-premises data center versus what you would be spending in a cloud service with cloud infrastructure, something like Amazon Web Services, you might actually save money. So cost could kind of straddle the fence here. We have it as a drawback, and that's more of a personal thing for you guys, right? Because, for our personal needs, it's kind of like the flash drive example we mentioned. You spend $15 on a flash drive and you have it for a long time and you have a lot of data storage there. Whereas you'd be spending $5, $10 a month for similar cloud storage, which is less than ideal. And so when we talk about the cloud, we talk about it typically in terms of storage and applications, since that's most of what you're familiar with. But there's also a whole lot of other stuff that we can use in the cloud. And I'd like to point out 3 of them here. So you're probably used to to applications like Google Docs or Office 365 Online or, various other applications for creating documents, or something like Google Drive or Dropbox or, something like that for saving and storing documents. But there are a lot more things that we can use with the cloud. Because remember, the cloud is essentially just someone else's computer that we can access via the internet. And so we put these cloud services in multiple categories. There are more than just the three that we've shown here, but for our purposes, we're just going to stick with these three. Software as a service, or SaaS, SaaS. Platform as a service, or PaaS, PaaS. And infrastructure as a service, which really we can't pronounce that. We just call that IaaS. And these are all three different categories of what we can do with the cloud. And so if we consider that our cloud is essentially just someone else's computer that we can access via the internet, then we could start to branch out what we do with what we can use in the cloud, which makes things pretty cool, right? So the first one is the one that you're probably the most familiar with, which is SaaS, or software as a service. And so this is the software that's online that you can access from anywhere in the world via the cloud, right? So this is what you're familiar with. This is your Google Docs. This is your Google Drive. This is your Microsoft Online 365. This is your Dropbox. This is all sorts of stuff, right? SaaS, it utilizes the internet to deliver applications, which are, is software or websites delivered by a third-party vendor to its users. And a majority of SaaS applications run directly through your web browser. Now, they don't have to. I'll mention one in just a minute where it doesn't. But the majority of these applications can run in your web browser, which means they don't require any downloads or any installation. So we have a few examples here, and I'll mention some other examples. But the Google Workspace, which is your Google Docs, your Drive, your Sheets, your Slides, all of the above, right? Your Google Workspace, your Microsoft Office 365, so Word Online, PowerPoint Online, Excel Online, OneNote, Teams, whatever you need. Things like Evernote and Dropbox, and even things that we've become intimately familiar with over the past year and a half, things like Zoom and GoToMeeting are software as a service. Blackboard is a software as a service. You can actually get it two different ways. You can get it to where you can download it and install it on your own servers, or you can get it as a software as a service where it's hosted on the Blackboard servers and they manage it and they deal with it for you. And you just get access to it and use it. And that's how we have it here at Cleveland Community College. The Blackboard that we have at Cleveland Community College is software as a service. The Adobe Creative Cloud is software as a service. You pay for it monthly. As long as you pay for it monthly, you can use the software. Now, this is one instance where you have to download and install the software, but it still requires that cloud element in order to be able to run. That's why they call it the Creative Cloud. And you also have some cloud features on there too that you might be familiar with, things like your your fonts that you can get and share between different devices, and the image assets that you can get and share between different devices, all that kind of stuff. So SaaS, or software as a service, probably the one that you're most familiar with. These other two, probably not familiar with any of these things at all. But especially when we get to infrastructure as a service, I'm going to talk about one in particular that some of you might be interested in taking advantage of. But the next thing that we have here is PaaS, or Platform as a Service. And so these are primarily for software and application developers. So these are significant to someone like me. The majority of what I teach here at Cleveland Community College is in programming, software development, web development. And in order to build some more advanced types of programs, you need to have an environment in which you can build them. And PaaS services allow us to do that without having to create our own environment on our own computer. So things like Heroku and Elastic Beanstalk and OpenShift and the Google App Engine are all super useful for somebody who's a programmer. So, maybe you're out there and maybe you've thought before about, well, maybe I'd like to learn how to code, or maybe I'd like to try programming or something like that. That's where services like this become incredibly more important. That way, the cloud provider can maintain that environment that you're working on. Well, and all you have to worry about is what you're making, that software, that program. Now, infrastructure as a service, that's pretty interesting. These services are made of highly scalable and automated compute resources. Compute resources. They're doing your calculations. Remember what we talked about last week. They're doing your processes for you. So you can basically think about this as having your own computer in the cloud. It's not just someone else's computer that you're accessing, even though it still is. You're accessing someone else's computer, but in this case, it's like your computer. So you're a lot more free to kind of do what you will with these sorts of cloud services. This is your general AWS, your general Amazon Web Services, your Google Compute Engine, your DigitalOcean, your Linode, your Workspace. It allows businesses and you to purchase resources on demand and as needed, instead of having to buy hardware. And one of these things that might be most significant to you is something like the final example that I have listed down here, Shadow.tech. And I'd like to take you out of this for a moment and take you over to the Shadow.tech website. Shadow.tech. Your new PC is in the cloud. You can see that there. So this is essentially meant for people like you and I, for regular people. Now you get online and you try to buy a gaming computer. Right? Like if you go to Amazon to buy a gaming computer, you're looking at the MSIs, you're looking at the Alienwares, you're looking at, whatever it is you're interested in to buy a gaming computer, some, really fast, really powerful computer that you can use to play games or do graphic editing or video editing. You can see that those are real expensive and can get real expensive really quick. $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 or more, right? But for this, what you're doing is you're taking that gaming computer that you could have bought for $4,000 and it's virtualized. It's in the cloud. You can access it from any computer anywhere in the world. So when you access this computer, the specifications of the computer that you're on don't really matter. What matters is the specifications of the computer that you're accessing and, if you want to do a lot of competitive gaming, how fast your internet is. Which is pretty cool. Like we can look at these tech specs here. And this shows you the baseline of what you can access via a Shadow.tech virtual machine in the cloud without having to buy it, right? GeForce GTX 1080 graphics card. Nice graphics card, right? Quad-core 8-threaded processor, really fast processor. 12 gigabytes of RAM. A 256 gigabyte solid state drive. You can upgrade that. Windows 10 for $30 a month at the baseline. Now we can look at the requirements here and see what you need. If you're able to get a 15 megabyte per second download speed, so that's less than 30 milliseconds of ping, then you're going to have a good time. You know, it even says here that it can work with 4G LTE. You can get on one of these gaming computers from your phone, right? We have an iOS here. We have an Android here. And we can see that these hardware requirements, the hardware requirements that we have for the computer that we're accessing this from, are nowhere near as robust as the hardware requirements that we can get, right? Like if we look at these Windows specs here, 4 gigabytes of RAM. 4 gigabytes of RAM lets you be able to log into this cloud computer, and all of a sudden it's like you have 12 gigabytes of RAM. You can do things like you have 12 gigabytes of RAM on this cloud computer. Your processors here, you've got some old, slow ones here, like Celeron processors, Opteron processors, Athlon 2s, old, slow processors. But you get on them, and it's just like you have the modern quad-core, 8-thread, super-fast processor. This is infrastructure as a service for $30 a month. Or more if you want to get something that's faster or with higher specifications. Let's see, I think I might be able to click subscribe here and we can see some more stuff. We have to choose a state to see our availability. Looks like we're not quite ready for North Carolina yet, but, you know, hey, it's all good, right? It's a service that you could think about as you're thinking about, well, you know, should I buy that new computer? And, you know, again, because of elastic computing, when the new stuff comes out, you don't have to buy a new computer. You can just go in and click a button and it automatically makes your cloud computer better. Which is pretty cool, right? No new parts, no new whatever. Just go in and click. So that's cool. What I'd like to do now is just show you a few demonstrations as we kind of wrap up here, and we'll kind of make these pretty quick because I've already showed you some of this stuff in some previous videos, so we won't really worry a ton about it. I want to talk about Office 365. I want to look at that in comparison and contrast with Google Docs, and I want to show you Evernote, and I want to show you OneNote. All right, so let's start off by heading here to our Cleveland Community College application portal. And this is what you reach right after you click that login button on the Cleveland Community College homepage. You put in your username, you put in your password, it leads you here. Now, as I've mentioned before, right, mine has a lot more icons on it than yours does. And that's, you know, it's all like teacher stuff, right? Got to manage data on the back end for various other things. But one thing that we both have is this Office 365 icon. Looks like an orange cloud. And now we know today why it looks like an orange cloud, because Office 365 is a cloud service. I can click this icon here and I can access Office 365 anywhere that I have an internet connection. And so when I click that button, I get this is my Office 365 homepage. And so this has a bunch of my data stored in it. But over here on the left-hand side, I have these icons for the different SaaS or SaaS applications that I can use with Office 365. I have Word, I have Excel, I have PowerPoint, Outlook, OneDrive, OneNote, SharePoint, Teams, Sway I added on to mine, I believe. You might or might not have Sway, But then I have forms, right? And these are various software as a service, cloud services that you can use. So I'm going to click on Word here and open it up in a new tab. And we see what we get when we start that. And we can create a new blank document or general notes or all this kind of stuff. And we can see a bunch of our other files here that we have. So I'm going to click a new blank document. And so I'm going to create a new blank document just so we can see it side by side with our Google Docs. Now the first thing we see here is this is very similar, right? Like if we look back at this versus our Google Docs here, which I just went to docs.google.com to get there, we see something that's incredibly similar to what we see here when we clicked on our Word icon. Another software as a service. This one's from Google. That one's from Microsoft. 6 of one, a half a dozen of the other. I can click a new blank document here. If I wanted to get to any of the other services, I can click this hamburger menu up in the upper left-hand corner of the page. And you can see I have sheets, slides, and forms that I can get to from here. But I can create a blank document here. And have it open up my blank document in a word processor. And so here, we see our blank document in our Word 365 online edition. And we can see our Google Docs word processor document. And notice, key thing, I've not left my browser. I've not opened up any different pieces of software on my computer. This is all in the cloud. It's all accessible through my browser. I'm still in Chrome. And I can go in here and I can type my papers. I can write whatever I want to write. And it's all in here. And I can use these different things to add, maybe I want to add a picture in here. I can insert a picture. And I can pick it from this device. I can pick stock images. So like if I want to type stock images, that'll come up and I can type in cloud. And then we can take a picture of a cloud and put it in there. Didn't like that one apparently. That's okay. We can go back, we can remove it, we can do whatever we need to. And we can see here that our Google Docs is pretty much the same. We have all of these different menus up here, which we can do different things. We can insert an image, and we can search from the web here, just the same as we were doing there. I can come over here and search cloud. Click on it there, and insert it into my paper. And it's just the same. I can add an image in both places. Now, the big thing here is that I can share this file. I can share this file here, or I can share this file here. We can see share buttons in similar places, right? One of the things that we're seeing here, both of these are, very, very similar. But I can click this and click, in my Word, Office 365 edition. I can click that, I can copy my link, or I can put in email addresses of people that I want to be able to send it to. I can give them permissions so they can edit my presentation or they cannot. Now I can show you this one because I'm within Cleveland Community College. For those of you who are using your Google Docs with Cleveland County Schools, you'd have something similar in your Google Docs. I just don't have access to that because I don't have that Cleveland County Schools Google Docs. But we see there, if I click on link settings, I can send it to anyone with the link, people within Cleveland Community College with the link, people with existing access, or specific people. I can give them permission to allow editing. I can put a password on it. I can block the download of it. I can even set an expiration date for when I don't want them to have access to this file anymore, which is pretty cool. Over here in my Google, and that's what you're going to need to be able to do, at least part of that, to do your collaboration assignment for this module. Same thing over here with Google Docs, right? I can click on share. Need to save it before I can share it. I can add the people that I want to share it with. I can copy the link. I can change what kind of access they have. Anyone with the link can edit. Or I can restrict it to specific people and allow them to edit. Or I can do both, right? Like I can have specific people that are editors and specific people who are viewers, which is pretty cool. So I can say anyone with the link can view, but I can add share group people here. And add them to be people that I want to be able to edit this with. And, you know, same thing applies. You know, we can do the same thing with both of them. You know, we see that, you know, when we're looking at this Microsoft Word 365 Online versus our Google Docs, it's a really, really, really similar experience. In this instance, what we're talking about really is just preference, right? What do you like? What's easier for you to use? Now, if you want more features, you're probably going to want the downloaded Word edition, and we can actually still do some collaboration with the save or with the downloaded Word collaboration edition. You could still collaborate. Click the wrong window there. Sorry. Let me get back to where we were. But since that's a downloaded thing, that's kind of outside our scope, we can talk about that more when we get to Word. So you'll be, you know, in your collaboration assignment, you'll be using one of these two. Or you could also choose to use PowerPoint or Google Slides to create a presentation, right? But the same sort of thing is going to be present in both. You still have the same share file. You still have the same, you know, sorts of permissions and all that kind of stuff. So the last thing that I want to examine here are our note-taking apps. We have one that we can get to with our Office 365, which you can get through to this Office 365 homepage. That's OneNote. Sorry for the delay there. I'm not sure how much we missed there while the stream was down for just a second there. But we have this one here. In terms of note-taking applications, we have one that... We have this one here that we can use with our Office 365, which is our OneNote. I clicked on it from the left-hand panel here. Versus Evernote, which is its own service. So I go to evernote.com for this. We can zoom into that there and show you that. Evernote.com. And so let me log into evernote.com here. Password saved in my password manager. And so technically both of these services are free, right? Like we have free services here that we can use for both of them. Since you have Office 365 because you're a Cleveland Community College student, you can use OneNote here. You can use Evernote for free. Right, and they're very similar. To me, OneNote has just a little better of an interface than Evernote. Evernote's a little bit confusing in terms of its user experience and user interface. For example, if I want to create a new notebook in OneNote, I see I have a nice big purple new notebook button here that I can click. And I can type in a name here, demonstration. And that'll create my new notebook versus if I want to create a new notebook here in Evernote, there's this little plus symbol here beside of the notebooks. I can click that, name my notebook, and we have a new notebook called Demonstration that we can go to. We still have to click on that notebook. So now I have new notebooks called Demonstration in both OneNote and Evernote, and you can see that they look different. But this is also a cloud service. Remember, again, I've not left Chrome. Right? So if you are in a computer lab, if you're in a library, if you are on your phone, you can take notes or review your notes using these services. So that's why I like to point them out, because they are really cool. Right? So let's make a note in our OneNote first, and then we'll come back to our Evernote here just to see the process. So it tells me that this notebook is empty. I can click here or press enter to create a new section. So just clicking on that empty section lets me make a new section. I can enter a section name. For our purposes, since we're just demonstrating this, we can call it section 1. If it were you, you might call it polynomials, or you might use that day, like, oh, today is June the 7th. I'm going to write down notes for my June the 7th class, so let me put in June the 7th here. In fact, that might be good here if I call this June 7. Now I have a notebook here called June the 7th, and I can start writing notes. Clouds, storage concepts, and here's some information. And I can put pictures in here. I can make drawings in here, right? Like we have our insert. We got emojis. We got math equations. We got symbols, files, pictures, links. We can draw. We can just draw straight in here. I can take my pencil and I can take a black pencil and I can just draw it straight in here. So if I want to draw some kind of diagram that my instructor puts on the board, I can just draw it in here. Write in what I want to write in. Which is incredibly nice if you have like an iPad or a Surface that you like to use. Then I can just leave drawing mode. Go back to text mode. And start writing in here again. Like nothing ever happened. And it's all synchronized and saved in the cloud. Right, I can just come back in here and I can just start typing some more information and notes. And so I've got it saved in a notebook for that date when I'm ready for a new one. I can, let's see here. It's a new, add section down here at the bottom. All right, I can add a new section for the next class. Maybe there's another class on Wednesday. That'd be June 9th. So now it has its own notebook, and I can go back and forth between my days. This is what I studied this day. This is what I studied that day. Incredibly useful, right? And there's computers. Most of you have access to, some kind of Chromebook, some kind of laptop, some kind of computer lab computer in any class that you're in. Evernote's much the same, right? Like I can click a new note here. That'll create my new note. Cloud, I can use the date here. I can call it June 7. Cloud storage concepts, a little bit different then. And I can just start writing my information in my note. And just like With our OneNote, we can insert drawings, we can insert dividers, attachments, photos, checkboxes, code blocks, even, things from our Google Drive. Remember that integration of cloud services? I can do that sketch thing again where I can draw whatever I want to draw. Have that inserted into my notes. And then for the next class, I can click New Note. It might be June the 9th. And when I'm studying, I can go back through, look at what we did on each day. And it's really easy to keep up with my notes and do what I need to do. So it's cool, right? Like, this stuff is cool. And if you're not using this type of stuff, you should be. Because it's really going to help you out in class in the long run. Keeps you better organized, which, if you've taken any of the ACA classes or you've taken any sort of thing about how to be a good student, you know that one of the big keys of being a good student is being organized, which is pretty cool. So this is where we'll stop for today. We've gone over our hour, and I apologize for that. You got a ton of information in today's live stream. All sorts of different stuff, right? I'm going to hang out in the chat for just a couple minutes, just in case anybody who's here with me live has any questions. If you're watching this later and you have a question, feel free to contact me. But that's all that I have for you for today. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.